All right, so we just went over the Power 5 transfer portal winners. Now let's look at the group of 5. Equally as important and interesting. I know that some people will say that they're not on the same playing field, but as we look at some of these schools, these are programs that are competing and that are causing some disruption. And if you don't believe me, look at our first team from the Sun Belt, the Louisiana Lejean Cajuns. Ask Iowa State, who's projected to be a contender for not just the Big 12 championship this year, but possibly even a college football playoff position. And they were sniffing the college football playoff last year. They opened up with a home loss to these same Cajuns. And Louisiana really brought in a lot of collective talent by way of the portal. Lance Lejean comes back home. He's a Louisiana kid who committed to Maryland, played there for a couple seasons, never really was able to grasp and hold on to the starting job for more than a couple of games, with Talia Feiloa nailing down that quarterback job last year and really looking good in doing so. Lejean is coming back to the Bayou State and will most likely be a backup to Levi Lewis at quarterback this year. But should something happen to Lewis, Lejean gives them a quality backup, and he's not alone. That's a pretty healthy quarterback room that we'll take a look at as we examine Louisiana closer as the season gets closer here. They also bring out Jacob Kuboti, who is a transfer from Incarnate Word, but before that he was at Texas A&M, and he was in the top 4 in that running back committee out in College Station. Now, he's a bigger back. He really fits the bill of what Billy Napier likes to have in his backfield. We saw it with Mitchell and with Regis, and now I think Kuboti is going to be the next guy who's going to chalk up the yardage. I easily see him being a guy who averages over 100 yards a game on the ground, so look out for that. TJ Feiloa is a 3-year starter from Louisiana Monroe, so he heads south down to Lafayette, Louisiana, staying within the Sun Belt, but he's going to add into an already talented offensive line group for the Raging Cajuns. So this legitimately is a top 10 offensive line unit coming in, and Feiloa is talented enough to where he could compete and might likely win a starting spot on the left side of that line, whether it be guard or tackle, depending on how they want to work players in. And even if he doesn't, he's certainly quality depth that they can put up front, as they do like to rotate and keep healthy. And then there's also a guy to look out for, John Stevens, a bigger target. I think he goes 6'3". He comes over from TCU. And Louisiana has a pretty stout and athletic wide receiver crew coming in, young talent. But then you add Stevens, who had a little bit of hindrance at Fort Worth, and, you know, with some injury issues, was never really able to materialize and didn't necessarily get the help that he could have used from his offensive brethren there in Fort Worth. He comes over to Louisiana, and I think will give them a receiver that's going to pay dividends and a big target, and certainly adds to that wealth of riches that they have in Louisiana, in Lafayette. Moving over to the AAC, we've got the UCF Knights, and Gus Malzahn comes in, and he has really helped clean up and attract a lot of quality starter talent coming over to Orlando, so much to the point where UCF is definitely right back in the thick of the hunt for the AAC title. And I know people are thinking, what about Cincinnati? Don't forget about them. Oh, I haven't. And UCF is going to contend, and they're going to compete with them this year along with Memphis. But Big Cat Bryant, after 4 years in Auburn, Alabama, he comes over and adds another year and will follow Malzahn and gives the Knights a terror on that front, a very good pass rusher, but also athletic enough to play the run and set the edge for that Knights defense. On the other side, most likely being the bookend, will be Ricky Barber, who was an all-Conference USA defensive end at Western Kentucky, put up some impressive stats last season. He takes his abilities and comes down south to Orlando, Florida. So look for Bryant and Barber to be names that you hear a lot of, and we'll have to think of maybe a nickname for this duo, because I think that they're going to be in opposing backfields quite often. Also on the defensive side is somebody that maybe is not a household name, but I think he will be, and that's linebacker Bryce and Armstrong, who comes over from Kennesaw State. He was an FCS All-American. He was Defensive Player of the Year in either the Big South or the Southland Conference. I can't remember exactly where Kennesaw State plays, but he was on a lot of watch lists, and his numbers were very impressive in his 4 years at Kennesaw State. So he comes over to Orlando, and I see him as a guy who not only could come in and start right away, but I think he's got captain material. He just looks like a defensive player. He looks like somebody who commands respect and really commands the field when he plays on it. And then you go to the offensive side of the ball, which is what UCF is known for. You got the talent of Brandon Johnson, a wide receiver from Tennessee, who I believe was a 4-star, lengthy, and I think fits right in with that UCF style of passing scheme. So he'll be wearing number 3 for the Knights this season. He'll add in, and it's more than just these 4 players. UCF really had one of the more impressive transfer portal hauls of any of the teams, these 10 teams that we're highlighting, both in the Power 5 and Group of 5. We go to the MAC, and not a lot of transfer help in terms of, star talent in the MAC, but some guys who played quality minutes at some Power 5 schools. Nakeem Johnson was a little bit of a surprise leaving Syracuse and coming to play at Kent State. Now, there was that connection when Sean Lewis, the current head coach for the Kent State Golden Flashes, when he was the OC over in Syracuse under Dino Babers, Johnson has that kind of connection there. I'm assuming that he was partially recruited by Lewis and liked what he saw there. He has the chance to put up big numbers, especially with the loss of McCoy at wide receiver for Kent State. Johnson can step right in, and he's also going to be a dynamic threat in the return game, both returning kicks and punts. Also coming over from Syracuse is tight end Aaron Hackett, a bigger body. I think that he will compete possibly for all MAC honors just because of his physicality and because of what he can do with so much of the focus being on the running backs and the outside receivers for Kent State. It's going to be difficult for some of these MAC linebackers or MAC safeties to match up and compete with Hackett. And Dustin Crum certainly has a great outlet to throw to in the middle of the field or in the flats. And I like Hackett there at Kent State. They also got safety Antoine Richardson, who is a multi-year starter from the University of Maryland. He's kind of been up and down the last couple of years, what with the pandemic and a little bit with injury. But Richardson is a captain of the secondary. He's a good leader back there, and I think will help bolster that defense for Kent State, especially in the back end. And also providing help is New Mexico safety Nico Bolden. Now, Bolden really has come on of late in his time in Albuquerque, but just didn't see what he wanted and didn't feel that was the best fit for him. So he comes north to play in Dick's Stadium for Coach Lewis and that flash fast team, not just offensively, but defensively. He gives them a lot of speed and really a scrapper at safety, and somebody will come up and pop you as well. Going over to the Mountain West. Now, this is another team, Utah State, who had an impressive collection of talent that they brought in from the transfer portal. New head coach Blake Anderson coming over from Arkansas State really transplanted and shifted a lot of his players that he had out there in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and bringing them out to Logan, Utah to play at Maverick Stadium and in Utah State. And it's headed by quarterback Logan Bonner. Bonner was a dual quarterback. He split time with Lane Hatcher at Arkansas State, and he's going to have to compete because they've got a couple of talented quarterbacks out at Utah State, especially ending the year last year. But Bonner's a guy who is a proven passer. He's very efficient, and I think will help direct that offense for the Aggies. On the defensive side, Justin Rice comes over as a player who was all Mountain West at Fresno State. He was all Sun Belt at Arkansas State, and now has the opportunity to be all Mountain West again. And as far as I know, the first player to ever win all conference or earn all conference honors at 3 different schools in 2 different conferences 3 separate times. So Justin Rice is definitely a talent that will be playing linebacker and will likely lead the Mountain West in tackles this year. You can mark that down. Another linebacker that they bring in is Miami transfer Patrick Joyner. Now, Joyner didn't play a whole lot last season, and he kind of put himself into the portal early and signed with Utah State, I think even before 2020 was done in terms of the overall regular season. But Joyner is a hitter. He's a good tackler, good run defender in the middle of that defense. So he and Rice together give them some two talented linebackers on that defense. And then also in the defensive side of the ball, Kyle Mayberry, who has played pretty well at Kansas, although times have not been great out in Lawrence. What Mayberry, who's nicknamed Money, does well is he covers a lot of ground, a pretty good pass defender, but he's also quick to close on the ball, pretty good tackler, and really a guy who's pretty fearless, which you have to be at corner. So holding his own against some of those talented Big 12 receivers, now he comes over to the Mountain West, and I think will maximize his talent and relative to the talent he's going against now compared to what he was facing in the Big 12, I think he'll match up well and will probably have a good season for himself. And then finally, out in Conference USA, Western Kentucky might have, in a matter of speaking by numbers, the biggest haul of talent and bringing talent into Bowling Green, Kentucky. So it's headlined by former FCS star Bailey Zappi. So Zappi comes over from Houston Baptist, and maybe before I go further, the biggest recruit that Western Kentucky got was Zach Kitley, who was the offensive coordinator from Houston Baptist. His offenses were averaging nearly 50 points a game and over 400 yards total offense a game, most of it by throwing the football. And it's coming from Bailey Zappi. And he's a guy who knows how to sling it. He put up good numbers even against FBS talent last year. He's likely going to step in and be the guy who will take over at quarterback. I think it's his job to lose. And I think that, we're going to see some big numbers and maybe even some sleeper Heisman talk as the season gets going on early on when he starts to put up big numbers. He's got a couple good guys to throw to. He brings over his top 3 receivers from Houston Baptist, and one of them is Jarrett Stearns. So he was his number 1 go-to guy last year. Stearns had 47 catches for Houston Baptist. He's a good receiver in space, kind of shifty. He can stretch the defense, and I think in this offense, he's comfortable with it. So when you've got your quarterback and you've got your top 3 receivers coming over, even though they're at a new school, a new program, they're pretty much going to be running the same offense. So I expect productive numbers from that Western Kentucky Hilltopper passing game this year. They also get the addition of Zach Lafave, who was one of my favorite players in the MAC last year and really the last couple of years. Just a good pro-type tight end and somebody who I think that you're going to see him. His name is going to be called in the NFL draft next year. I was a little bit surprised he didn't declare for the draft just because of the fact that tight ends are a position that the NFL guys are really looking at a little bit closer now. But Lafave is going to have another year in college football to add some pretty good numbers. I think his numbers will go up in terms of catches, but also yards per reception. And that's going to paint an even better portrait of himself as he goes into next year's draft. I think that he will be an NFL tight end before it's all said and done. And then on the defensive side, Michael Pitts comes over from Cincinnati. Now, Pitts didn't play a whole lot last year. He played an outside linebacker position at Cincy. It looks like he's going to move down to defensive end, playing for Western Kentucky, but he's a physical, strong defensive end. He's a habit guy. He's going to get after quarterbacks. He's going to get in the backfield and rack up some TFLs, tackles for loss, and provide some problems for opposing offenses. So that's our group of 5 transfer portal winners. And of course, there are some honorable mentions, and you can catch all that if you go to our website, cfpcollegefootball.com, and there's a special section at the top, transfer portal. You can go there. We've got links to some of the best sites, so 24/7 Sports. We've also got this presentation that you saw in the video. But if you haven't, if you're listening to this on our podcast, our CFP podcast, go to our website, cfpcollegefootball.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at @champion_lit and find a whole lot more of what you're looking for as we continue to move through the summer season before 2021, when we kick off on August 28th in week 0, college football. I'm Chappie, and this is what I know.